excuse me, we're going to go through a couple of chapters here. They're relatively short analysis because there's not a great deal of depth to the chapters. They more progress the narrative and have lots of plot points. We left off with Rat returning after stealing the money from Father Juilliard and him feeling terrible about it. And the first thing we note is that Gardo doesn't feel that he has been a sly, traitorous, ungrateful thief and doesn't think it's a big deal, and then even suggests that they'd go and put the 20,000 back and give it back to the mission school. So he doesn't see it as a crime. He sees it maybe as a way of finding some sort of justice, and that it would only be a temporary thing. And that's one of the great benefits of the multiple perspectives. We said it in class that how Rat feels about himself may not in fact be the way Gardo and Raph see him, and that's great evidence of that here on this double page. We have here in the yellow, I feel less like a mean, sly, traitorous, ungrateful thief, which is Rat, and then almost immediately we have Gardo saying that it wasn't a big deal. So we can see the benefits of that multiple perspective technique that Mulligan has used. The chapter goes on and describes their attempts to get the Bible back off Marco the guard. We see here in the green, and make that note appear. We can see that Gardo, we learn a bit more about Gardo, and even though he's been the tough guy, he says here, down here, that he doesn't know how Raph could have survived the police beating, and that it would have scared the life out of me. So maybe in this way, Gardo's admitting that Raph has in fact as tough as him, or maybe even a little bit tougher. There's a couple of little questions there that may prompt a bit of thought. Okay, so then we find out that they're going to head up and meet Marco and try and get the Bible back, and this is all laced with that fear that he's going to double cross them and steal the money from them and hand them to the police, which, you know, you can understand kids living in this world would have that suspicion and fear, and they've got that there, that he's taking his hook and he's prepared to do what he has to get away and to find some sort of justice. And as I said in my note there, I think it's fair enough considering that they have lived a life in this sort of corruption. It moves on a little bit, and we find that Gardo meets Marco in that tea house, and the fear of, you know, not being given the right Bible, or being caught, or being betrayed to the police is actually a reality. And we see down here that Marco was right not to trust the guard. He was out for money, and then a further example of that corruption. This is an interesting one where he turns around and he slashes at Marco's head and gets him in the eye, and we sort of are left to wonder, would that be fair? Would that be just if the traitorous and treacherous Marco was left disfigured by Gardo's hook, or in fact is Gardo the criminal for being so violent? We see the boys split up because it's necessary, and that's sort of probably at their lowest moments, and off they go. And it's interesting that in order to blend in, that Gardo has to slash his jeans and cut his short, and take his shoes off and stuff, and pretend to be Bahala again. Raphael takes over the story, and he feels that this next part of the story is his fault. I do like this bit that they thought that these boys are being constantly underestimated. They were thought as trash by the police, and people don't look at them, but they're pretty strong, and they're pretty courageous, and they're resilient, and they're smart, and people constantly underestimate them, and they constantly rise over them, and that's a good attribute to have, to be constantly proving people wrong about yourself. This is an interesting one that sort of leads us to think that maybe someone that we've met hasn't been completely loyal. So we hopefully, certainly not, it's going to be one of the three. Okay, so Raph has got the story still going in chapter 4. And they get back to the house, and this is where they're looking for a bit of solace. So they find back together, and again they hug and laugh and stuff, just like a family would. We see the boys work through the solving of the problem, and despite the fact that they weren't educated, they weren't stupid, and it didn't actually take them very long to work out the code and solved it. I found this just a bit interesting for no right reasons, but Rat sort of tells us he's a bit of a larrikin. He's gone out and found himself some rum or some alcohol and bought that and bought a bit back for the other boys. Okay, so they're trying to solve the mystery. It's interesting that Mulligan's made it on All Souls Day, on the Day of the Dead, because we've got so many characters that have died: Gabrielle, Jose, Dante, Raph almost. So it's an interesting sort of thing, and we've got that reference in the earlier chapters to their house being like a coffin. So it seems to be a very common theme for the author. They finally work it out. This is the message that they find, and then they're stuck. They can't find what map ref is, and it was only until Rat, who'd been to a bit of school, and then Gardo remembered that Gabrielle's prisoner identification number was not 746229, it was in fact something else, so this becomes their map reference. And as we can see on this last page, we find that it is in a graveyard, which does tap into that line from the code of where we lay. So we're almost towards the end of the story now. We've only got a few chapters to go, but they're obviously heading towards the graveyard, which we knew Jose left the money in, or took the money to, should I say. I just like another couple of things here that Gardo kissed him right on the head, which again is another great sign of this bond and this family that these boys are building together, and it leads us to think that in the next chapter we're going to be looking for something special, a bright light or a special grave. Okay, so as I say, hopefully these little clips are helping you delve a bit deeper into the book, and some of the questions, whether you're actually writing answers to them or just pondering them, is probably helping you prepare for your assessment, which is coming up very, very shortly. Anyway, that'll do us now. I'll take up from chapter 5 next time.